Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I wish to speak on three areas. First, the strategic direction of the budget. Second, an assessment on the schemes currently in place to help enterprises transform. And last, the implication of the increased social expenditure. On strategic direction of the budget, Honourable MP Mr. Pritam Singh, in his speech, shared some ground feedback that he obtained, suggesting that this budget statement is tied with the election cycle rather than being a strategic budget. Respectfully, I feel it is important for members of this House to deal emphatically with such soundings, as they may give rise to cynicism if left unchecked, may well undermine the stated objective of this year's budget, which is to build a strong and united Singapore. To understand the strategic direction of this year's budget, I found it useful to juxtapose this year's budget statement against the backdrop of previous budget statements, especially from the first year of the current term of government, so that we as members of this House can better appreciate where the government intends to take our country to overcome the challenges we face as a country. Members may recall slogans for the past 3 years' budgets. In the budget 2016, it was partnering for the future. 2017, it was moving forward together. 2018, together a better future. The broad themes for each year, including this year, are similar. On the economic front, there's an emphasis on the need to transform our economy to a lean, technology-based, innovation-driven economy that will ensure our enterprises will continue to capture their fair share of opportunities here and overseas. A lot of support is given for such transformation efforts. On our people's front, focus falls on training, deepening our capabilities, ensuring we are productive, possess skills that make us relevant to the world, and earn a decent living. On the social front, the focus remains on ensuring dealing with social inequality, dealing with social mobility, and access to critical needs, be it healthcare, education, so on. And also to build, ultimately, a caring and united society. Also, in addition, while we spend more on the social front, financial prudence is maintained always. So, as I see it, there's no change in the general direction of the strategy employed over these years. Those who describe this year's budget as a pre-election sweetener budget makes reference to the bicentennial bonus and the Merdeka generation package. I considered these viewpoints. My view is that such characterization does not take into account what happened the previous years, as well as the entirety of what Minister Heng Swee Keat announced this year. Every year, there's always been a slew of short-term measures announced in the budget statements, together with long-term measures. For example, in 2016 and 2017, Minister announced a one-off GST voucher cash special payment. And last year, we had the SG bonus. There are also pain points introduced this year, running contrary to the suggestion that this is an artificial feel-good budget. For example, the doubling of the diesel tax, introduced much to the chagrin of my colleague, Mr. Ang Hin Kee, to ensure a sustainable environment, and reducing foreign worker dependence to encourage higher productivity. On the $8 billion Merdeka generation package, there seems to be a misunderstanding on the purpose behind it. As I heard Minister Heng Swee Keat, the MGP is not for the purpose of plugging the healthcare or affordability need gaps. Existing systems and budget allocations already do that. And as I understand, we are spending more and more on healthcare year on year. Such gaps would have to be dealt with across the board, irrespective of the age of fellow Singaporeans. I understand that the objective behind the MGP is to acknowledge the contributions of the generation that contributed much to the economic development of Singapore. And in the words of Associate Professor Daniel Koh, the Merdeka generation taught him independence. So there's much to be recognized. It is analogous to the PGP, or rather the Pioneer generation, who is credited for the very existence of Singapore. No one in this House can hardly argue against the fact that the Merdeka generation Singaporeans, defined not just by age, but the depth of their roots in Singapore, did indeed strengthen the economic foundations of Singapore against prevailing odds then. So the case of acknowledging their contributions is therefore strong. Importantly, it is funded by current reserves. Now, it seems to me that we are in a fortunate situation to be able to fund the MGP through the current reserves because we have higher than expected contributions from stamp duty as well as from MES. Now, members of this House sometimes forget that whatever we budget for in this House does not define what will happen for the financial year. The spiritual amongst us may say, man proposes, God disposes. But really, it's the market circumstances that would dictate whether or not we would have sufficient resources for these packages. So to ascribe a political motive to say that the MGP is time for elections really kind of elevates the government to a position of being a fortune teller. I'm not sure whether that's an accurate way of describing the timing and indeed the position of the government. From the feedback that I've received, generally the MGP is well received both by the Merdeka generation as well as their children. It is well designed to promote active lifestyle in addition to providing for further healthcare subsidies. I do have a query on the funding quantum though. $6.1 billion is being set aside for an expected $8 billion expenditure. As a comparison, for the Pioneer Generation package, $8 billion was set aside for an expected $9 billion expenditure. I would like to ask the Honourable Minister how did he arrive at the $6.1 billion figure and how he will ensure that future governments will not inherit the task of funding the Merdeka Generation package. I did note that next generation, those born in the 1960s, seem to have an expectation that they should be beneficiaries of a package too, and I think Associate Professor Goh made a call along these lines. I'm a member of the 60s generation, and I'm not raising this out of personal interest. There are some bets going on outside this House as to how we would be labeled. The strongest horse seems to be modular generation. I don't have a suggestion for Professor Goh's generation, however. I think it is important, while we honor the Merdeka generation's contributions to the MGP, we in this House also take the opportunity to disabuse the notion that each succeeding generation will automatically be entitled to a package over and above the needs that has to be taken care of by the budget. Much depends on the extent and outcome of the generation's contributions. This is where the strategic direction that the government intends to steer Singapore to becomes relevant. This is where the call to unity to deliver sound economic and social outcomes becomes key. And Honourable Minister Heng candidly acknowledged in his statement that financial resources alone do not get us there. Also, I think any acknowledgement should be done by the succeeding generation, just like how the Merdeka Generation package is formulated by the fourth generation leaders, the 4G leaders, and details provided in this House by Minister Heng on behalf of the 4G leaders. Finally, like the PGP and the MGP, there should not be any financial burden placed on future generations, nor any drawdowns on past reserves. Otherwise, it would not be right. As I said before, the package is not meant to plug a needs gap. Next, on the efforts to transform enterprises. Year on year, much resources have been devoted to transform businesses of our 200,000 plus enterprises and skilling up our people. As advisor to the Port Officers Union, I'm personally aware of the great strides made by the port officers to be ready for the automated megaports by upskilling themselves. I note that the Honourable Minister intends to provide more support and in some instances refinements to current programs such as the SME Go Digital program and Enterprise Financing Scheme. May I please ask what is his assessment of the current schemes to date? Is he satisfied with the progress that's made? At the same time, the Honourable Minister announced adjusting downwards of the workforce quota for the services sector, which generates about 70% of our GDP. It is meant to deal with sluggish productivity growth in this sector, which is admittedly uneven. Would the Honourable Minister, however, not agree that the services sector is a kind of a broad church, which includes industries where it's not easy to automate or digitize for the purpose of increasing productivity? For example, in the logistics business, they would still need human drivers. The framework for autonomous vehicles would only be in place by 2030, if at all. Could there not be a more granular assessment of industries to see if Indeed, they have been laggards on the productivity front before placing a foreign manpower quota on them. Next, we need to be mindful that in the drive for enterprises to be cost-efficient and productive, we do not create a situation where full-time jobs are cut down in favor of engaging freelancers whose pays are variable. What strategy do we have to ensure that this would not happen as SMEs tap on government grants and programs? I would also like to make a call for financial resources to be channeled to build a strong Singapore brand that enterprises can leverage on. DPM Tharman recently mentioned this outside this House, that Singapore has gained a strong international reputation for trust. Minister Heng Swee Keat, as well as the Honourable MP, Mr. Liang Eng Wah, referred to Switzerland in their speeches. The Swiss have successfully carved a well-earned reputation for quality, punctuality, and reliability. We would have heard the phrase Swiss precision, where Swiss is used as an adjective. This is a result of a national marketing effort. Much has been written on this. Would the Honourable Minister agree that more can be done to strengthen the Singapore brand so that enterprises here can also leverage on this? This particularly dovetails with the Minister's call that enterprises build deeper partnerships across the world. What steps can he identify to support these brand-building efforts? Hopefully one day, the word Singaporean will become synonymous all over the world with dependability. On social spending and prudence, I note that the social expenditure is up. The Honourable Minister mentioned that social ministry spending has doubled to $30 billion within a 9-year period. As in previous government terms, when our economy grows, we also have an obligation to contribute to the reserves to be used for the uncertainties of the future. This is a big part of our responsibility to ensure a bright future for our children and our progeny. Does the Minister anticipate that the government will be able to follow the same practice in this term, notwithstanding its decision to set aside big sums for the various programs, which was helpfully identified by the Honourable MP, Ms. Foo Mee Har, in her speech? Finally, I would like to applaud the initiatives to strengthen the involvement of the community, corporations, as well as the better off amongst us to help our less fortunate families level up. To me, this captures the essence of what the Honourable Minister meant when he referred to building a united Singapore. The potential multiplier effect that will arise by facilitating involvement of private individuals and corporations in helping less advantaged families is very significant. This effort should not be the sole responsibility of our government. It also ensures that through this we will prudently manage our social expenditure. I fully support the strengthening of the SG Cares movement, the steps to enhance the spirit of volunteerism in our youth, seniors and public officers, as well as the setup of the bicentennial community fund, providing for dollar-to-dollar matching and tax incentives. These efforts will help to address issues of social mobility and inequality that MPs in this House debated passionately not too long ago. In conclusion, I express my support for Budget 2019. Thank you.